Cousins back to throw on 4th and 18. He's given time. He wants Jefferson. Climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! And in this heavyweight bout, the Vikings with the knockout blow.
And the Vikings are kings in the North once again.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Vikings Now podcast. I'm Jim Rich. This is Ahmad Hicks, and on the end, Pierre Noujaim. Vikings start the season losing a game that I called a must-win when the season started. It sounds crazy for a week one, but Pierre, am I crazy, or do you agree?
Well, I don't know if it was a must-win, but when you look at the schedule off the top, you know, when the schedule dropped, you looked at it, and I think everybody penciled in a win for this game because Tampa's a team that's a little bit in transition now with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, and I think a lot of people thought you're at home with week one. You look great in week one last year. Not that that really means anything this week, but at the same time, too, this is a game you should have won.
You have to win this game. You
have
have to win this game.
Yep.
You're going to look back all season long
Yep.
and say, God, we just let that Tampa game slip by. So I can still say it's a must-win. Ahmad? We've heard enough of your point. I want to hear Ahmad's now. No, you had your chance.
I just want to say
Ahmad,
real quick
go ahead.
that Baker Mayfield really showed me a lot more than anybody else on the Vikings team. Baker Mayfield played like a guy who wanted this game more, and Tampa looked like a team that wanted it more. And that's what I take away from week one.
And you know the crazy thing about that, Pierre, as I was watching the game at US Bank Stadium, there were so many plays that Baker Mayfield left on the field, so many passes up the seam or to the side, plays that he missed that should make you wonder, if you're a Vikings fan, just how good is this defense going to be this year? Because they look pretty bad today against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense that is not that good anymore. Was it a must-win game? Absolutely, because you're going to Philadelphia.
See? I told you, Pierre.
I think we all know what's probably going to happen in that game.
Thank you,
play
Ahmad.
the runner-ups in the Super Bowl. So I think today was definitely a must-win game. But then you look at the team and you think about all the points that the Vikings left on the board. An encroachment penalty on defense leads to not only a field goal from Tampa Bay, but a chance to go down and get 7. They get 7. And then you got Kirk Cousins going down the field on the 2-minute drive with a chance to put points on the board right before halftime. And instead of getting a guaranteed 3, he tries to thread the needle and get it to KJ Osborne, and it's picked off. And so they left a lot on the table. So if I'm a Vikings fan right now, I'm optimistic that this team can play better. But I'm also feeling down because that offense should have played way better than they did. And with Alexander Madison only rushing for, 36, 37 yards?
Yep.
Man, that's not
11 carries, 34 yards.
34.
That's why they called Kareem Hunt during the training camp.
Kirk Cousins said he ran hard, which I agree. He did run hard.
Oh,
That
he always
touchdown that he
does.
got,
I'm
the
not
second
saying
effort,
Madison's
yeah.
not good, but
If that
you
ru-
need a breakaway
sure.
back.
For
And
sure.
I don't think he's got that second gear.
Well, I don't even
where
think we
he
got a
could
chance
go.
to see that second gear because the offensive line played atrocious today. Garrett Bradbury with the back injury. Head coach Kevin O'Connell said he's day-to-day, so no word if he's going to play versus the Eagles later this week. Christian Darrisaw, ankle injury, he came back in. Coach said after the game that, that didn't provide any continuity with the guys up front, so that, of course, made things a little difficult.
No
But he
doubt
said he's
about
not
it.
making excuses for it. There's no excuses. They should have won that game.
All right, Pierre, the 3 turnovers. Cousins gets destroyed by Winfield, busting up the gut. The other, apparently, Ed Ingram knocked the ball out of Cousins' hand. And the third was the interception at the goal line, all in the first half. Is this a concerning trend, or is this a one-off?
Well, I mean, you do have to be a little bit concerned, I think, especially when you look at Kirk Cousins' history with fumbling the football. Now, I'm not going to blame him for getting blown up the way he did when Antoine Winfield came right down the pipe and those plays are going to happen.
Yeah.
Garrett Bradbury leaves the game. Austin Schlottman comes in at center.
Had that center exchange quarterback.
That exchange. I'm not going to. I don't really know who I should be placing the blame on for that, but the interception was bad. The interception was bad. You have to recognize the situation, and that ball was thrown a little bit behind KJ. And, credit to the Bucs. They made plays when they did, but you just cannot turn the ball over in a late half situation like that. Like Ahmad just said, you just cost yourself at minimum 3 points. And that 3 points ended up being the difference in the game, right? Well, we could say they could have been here tied at 20 by the end of the game, with an extra 3 points. But just a very uninspiring 60 minutes of football,
for sure,
in my opinion. Just really looked flat
After that game, both Cousins and O'Connell had something to say about that interception. O'Connell said that he wants Kirk to be aggressive, and he was being aggressive at that point. And he said that if he throws for a touchdown, everybody's like, oh, that was a great throw. And then Kirk says that it was a matter of him getting through his progressions. He said he got locked in on KJ. He thought that he could throw it behind him because he didn't want to lead him into a collision with that safety, but ultimately throwing it behind him led for the interception. He said he should have just got to his third read in that progression because they were doubling Justin Jefferson. He said Jordan Addison was coming across the field. So that's just a mere, trusting my guys. And Jordan Addison has only been out there for 4 quarters. And so at that point, Kirk didn't have trust in him to be where he needed to be. So that's something I think down the season he'll develop that trust in his number 3 wide receiver. Hopefully.
Well, I don't have any issues with Cousins because we saw last year, and again, he piled up the yardage today. Yes, the Vikings only had 3 possessions in the second half of yesterday's game, and 2 of them were 3-and-outs. They went for the touchdown, tied it up 17, and then the last 2 drives went nowhere. I think you have to look more at this defense and figure out what that defense truly is. Everybody said Brian Flores, he's going to cure everything. Well, unfortunately, Brian Flores doesn't play on the field.
Right.
And he could have the world's greatest scheme, but if you can't get to where you're supposed to be, it doesn't matter. So that defense did not get a mediocre Tampa offense off the field in the second half, especially at the end of the game. Like the Vikings were confident enough on their 3-and-out that we're punting it. There's over 4 minutes left. We're getting this football back, and they never did.
I'm fully aware that when you look at this Vikings defense on paper, you don't see a lot of pure talent on the field. You see some guys that are good, that are very good. There's not a lot of talent. However, I don't have a huge issue with how the defense played today. I think my biggest complaint with this defense today is a lack of pressure on the quarterback today. Only 1 sack in the game from Danielle Hunter. And even if you don't get sacks, you want to make the quarterback uncomfortable. And Baker Mayfield didn't look uncomfortable, like Jim said, really, particularly in the second half. He looked like he did whatever he wanted to out there. And I'm a little surprised that of a lack of pressure. I know Marcus Davenport wasn't in the game today. Maybe he makes a difference when he comes back from injury. But my issue today isn't really so much defensively, because we all came into the season saying, hey, Kirk Cousins is going to have the same offense, the same coordinator for the first time, and it's all going to be hunky-dory. The offense isn't going to be the problem. The offense looked like it hadn't played together at all. It just looked so kind of discombobulated at times. You throw the ball 44 times in a game where you never trailed by more than 7. You only run it 17 times. There's a complete lack of commitment to the run game. And again, the other problem is...
Or confidence.
Yeah, or confidence. The interior of the offensive line, like we said, Garrett Bradbury gets hurt. Christian Darrisaw comes out of the game. At one point, he did come back. But offensive lineman is probably the last position this team can afford to lose big-time players.
Now, I want to make a point to this. I'm going to read these stats, and I want you to tell me.
He's going to make a point.
Guys, if this is bad. The defense today surrendered 73 rushing yards and 169 passing yards, compared to the Vikings' 328 passing yards and 41 rushing yards. So is the defense, should they be getting more credit for what they did today? I know they couldn't get a stop in the second half, but it's hard to get stops when you're consecutively on the field and your team is going 3-and-out and your offense isn't giving you a chance. So with those numbers that I just stated, don't you think it's on the offense to win games? Because I thought coming into the season with the way that they didn't address their defense, they didn't bring in a lot of big names. They didn't bring in a lot of star power. They brought in Josh Oliver, paid him a lot of money. You extended T.J. Hockenson. You're working on a deal for Justin Jefferson. This screamed, we're going to score points this year. And they flat out did not score points. Kevin O'Connell said after the game, it boils down to execution, and we just did not execute. I think Kirk, over 330 yards passing. Justin Jefferson, over 150 yards receiving. I think these are things to build on. But as I said before, guys, when you're a play-action heavy team and you rely on a run game to establish and set up your passing game, you can't roll out the D-ends, and they're going to send blitzes because they know, like, hey, you're going to run for 2 yards and then you're going to bootleg pass. You got to establish a run game moving forward. 34 yards is not enough from Alexander Madison.
I mean, that first series of the game looked like we were watching quarterbacks because Cousins was getting hammered consistently right out of the gate on the first 2 passing plays.
Well, that's what happens when you don't address your offensive line, and that was a weak spot last year.
And even with those guys hurt, I don't think it makes that much difference because last year Cousins was the most hit quarterback in the NFL. And yes, you bring everybody back. Yes, they have another year experience, but I mean, how much can they really improve? So they go from the most quarterback hits given up to the 5th most quarterbacks hit given up. I mean, where is that ceiling for this offensive line?
Not high.
Facts.
Not high, in my opinion. And, we're going to have to wait to see if Garrett Bradbury comes back and plays in Thursday's game against Philadelphia.
Honestly, is it that big of a downgrade if he doesn't?
No, not really. No, the Christian Darrisaw is the much bigger pivotal piece. And like we said, he did come back into the game, so that's potentially a good sign. But sometimes the adrenaline gets you back in the game. Then after the game, you take a closer look at an injury, it might be more serious than what originally intended. We don't know that yet.
Adrenaline wears off.
Exactly. We don't know that yet. So if Christian Darrisaw can't play on Thursday against Philadelphia, then I think you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Thursday.
I think they are right. The guard play and the center play is terrible by the Vikings. We knew that coming into the season. And the Eagles have this guy named Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. I mean, we can go on and on, but, oh, man, it's going to be tough sledding Thursday.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay, you said, should we praise the defense more? Well, how good is the Tampa Bay offense really? I mean, it's no longer Tom Brady running the show. Their receiving core has
You still got 2 all-pro guys,
decimated.
And Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You don't have Antonio Brown there, but you still have 2 guys that won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Rashad White is going to be a superstar running back in the National Football League, and they still have a decent offensive line. So I think their offense isn't atrocious.
No,
and so I think it was a good challenge for Brian Flores.
I'd say it's middle of the pack to
for sure.
Above average.
And I think in the first half, you saw exactly what you wanted to see from Coach Flores, and that was his team literally getting stops, except for the one field goal where Kirk Cousins got sacked and the Buccaneers got the ball in the red zone. They still got to stop and held them to a field goal. But like I alluded to, you can't ask your defense to continuously go out there and get stop after stop if your offense isn't putting points on the board and staying on the field. And they did not help out their defense today. Yeah,
no doubt about it. So where are we at on the panic meter, Pierre? It's Monday morning. People are driving to work. They see that Philadelphia is a couple of days away. Where are you on that Pierre panic meter?
No, I don't want to be like the people online who have already written off the season and are already looking at Caleb Williams, the #1 overall pick.
Are we taking that bad? Oh, wow. Man.
Vikings fans reacting to a loss is one of my most favorite pastimes in all of my broadcasting career. But if you're asking me to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm already at a 7 already. Because you're like we said, you're staring down the barrel of an 0-2 hole here potentially against Philadelphia.
So it sounds like that Tampa game should have been a must-win, like I kind of said off the top, but you disagreed with.
Well,
but that's okay.
Yeah, it's not
you go ahead with your thought.
It's not a must-win until you have to win to either get into the playoffs or into the next round. If it's single elimination, it's not a must-win until then. All right. So what I would say is. I'm not optimistic that they're going to go down to Philadelphia and win.
You shouldn't be.
I'm not terribly optimistic with them playing, or I should say keeping up with the LA Chargers when they come in here 2 weeks. The LA Chargers in a game, they're putting up a lot of points up on the Miami Dolphins on Sunday. So I don't feel good about it. Are we seriously looking at a potential 0-3 start here? I don't feel good about it. I really don't. I really don't feel good about it, guys.
Where am I on the panic meter? I'm gonna say a 6 right now. I'm gonna say just a notch below Pierre, and here's why I say that. We already knew coming into the season it was a, quote, competitive rebuild. That is what General Manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah said. This is a competitive rebuild this year. That means that your team isn't that good, but you're hoping they can just compete, give some life. I think ESPN had their ceiling at 12 wins this year and the floor at 7 wins. I think, like Pierre mentioned, they go up to Philadelphia and get clobbered this weekend and start the season 0-2. They got to come back here and play probably a NFL MVP candidate in Justin Herbert and his explosive offense and a coach that's probably on the hot seat and his head coach. It's scary times for the Vikings right now. It really is scary times. Also, although it's only week 1 out of 18, there's a lot of football left to be played. But when you think about it, This team is going to have to outscore people. That means
Yes.
Jordan Addison is going to have a bigger role. KJ Osborne is going to have to start making spectacular catches. And somebody outside of Justin Jefferson is going to have to step up and be consistent every week. If not, we're looking at a 6-win football team. And we're not going to talk about how they're getting Caleb Williams, because if he doesn't like where he's going back to school. But he'll be the first quarterback and the first number 1 overall pick. So now you're talking about all those other guys, the Drake Mays from North Carolina and so on. It's like, are we really ready to bank Justin Jefferson's future on a rookie quarterback to come in here?
That's the next thing I wanted to go to. Justin Jefferson, a lot of media reports were saying he'd be signed by kickoff, ready to go. Did not happen. So what does that say to you? To me, it's very interesting, I'll say, because already there were questions to Kevin O'Connell after Sunday's loss about, well, what kind of effort do you think Justin Jefferson is going to give when you're in a situation where your guy didn't get paid and he played his cards perfectly in the media throughout? He said, hey, I'm not worried about it. I'm doing all the drills in camp. Still, even after the game, not a worry, not a worry. But behind the scenes, there could still be something cooking.
Pierre, you go first on this.
Well, there better be something cooking, because if there isn't something cooking, he's just going to keep getting asked about it over and over again to the point
And more annoyed.
Yeah, and more annoyed, and to the point where it becomes a distraction. And listen, he's going to set the market, whether it's in Minnesota or somewhere else. He's going to set a new bar for what wide receivers are paid in the NFL. Obviously, you want it to be here in Minnesota. I have, for as great as Justin Jefferson is, I still have questions about pouring in so many financial resources into one position, and especially when you did not commit to your quarterback beyond the end of this season. So why am I paying Justin Jefferson multiple hundreds of millions of dollars to stay on a team where I don't know who the quarterback is going to be next year?
Ding, 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 ding.
And people are saying, well, it doesn't matter who the quarterback might be. It's still Justin Jefferson. Yes, it does.
It does to Justin.
So,
he hasn't come out and said that. So we all know it.
That's the conundrum that faces this franchise right now. You know, he is the best receiver in football. You want to keep him in purple. Everybody wants him to stay in Minnesota. But does it make sense? Does it make sense? I don't know the answer to that question yet.
I think here are two things about Justin Jefferson. Obviously, he said what's done is done. That's what he said after the game today. So meaning his agent probably had talks with the front office of the Vikings, and they didn't come to a deal. Now, here's why I think they probably didn't come to a deal. Tyreek Hill, Miami Dolphins, signed a 4-year deal for $120 million. Devontae Adams with the Las Vegas Raiders signed a 5-year deal for $140 million. You know Justin Jefferson wants more than all of those guys. He said earlier this week, I'm in a different situation.
He wants more than Bosa, I would think. I think he's going to be a $200 million man.
But and you know what? And he has a legitimate argument for that. The numbers that he's been putting up, ridiculous since he entered the NFL. He's been underpaid since he stepped foot in the National Football League. So he certainly deserves a raise. And if you're the Vikings, you have to love that he's coming to work, still doing his job. But I think, like Pierre said, you don't know who's going to be quarterback next year. And if I'm a wide receiver, young wide receiver who has a lot of life left in me, a lot of legs left in me, and I want to play for Super Bowls. I love money, but I don't know if I'm signing for $150 million over 5 years, and then you're telling me we're going to go draft a rookie quarterback next year that may or may not pan out, and then I got to play 5 years with a have-not quarterback. Like, some days he's good, some days he's not. If I'm Justin Jefferson, I'm not signing here unless you give me a quarterback.
And if that's the case, Jim, if it gets to that point and the Vikings are sitting here at 2-5 to start the season, does the trade chatter start to emerge here
for Jefferson?
For Justin Jefferson?
No. He has
they have team control for
he has 2 more years. So
but at the same time too, you
don't do that until next year when you know that maybe an offseason where he said, "Look, I ain't coming back unless you give me somebody." I think that's next year.
But his value now could be, it might never be higher.
It's only going to, I think, if 150 yards in game 1 means he's probably going to average over 100 yards. They play 17 games. Yes. 1,700 yards.
Because they can't run the ball, apparently.
So that means
he's going to be
a 2,000-yard receiver, which means his number is only going to go up.
This is why you should have signed him as soon as the season ended last year. Before anybody thought about Kirk's extension, just go to him right away and say, hey, let's sign this right now.
But you know what they needed? They probably needed $35 to $40 million signing bonus up front. They did not have that this year. He needed a massive signing bonus because his salary this year is just under, I think, like $3 million or something like that for the season. I could be wrong. You guys pull it up. You can fact check us. But he's not making a lot of money. So a guy like that, he's like, look, when I signed my contract backloaded for $140 million, I want like 30, 40 up front because I'm overdue for that. And the Vikings didn't have that. And if you think about the money they got to pay him, you just signed, you got to pay Kirk Cousins next year if you decide to sign him.
If you decide to keep him.
T.J. Hawkinson just got a big extension. Josh Oliver just got paid a couple $1 million.
That's what I mean. Yeah. You put the cart before the horse.
For sure.
He is the horse.
For sure.
That would have been number one, and then I'd figure out the rest of it because he has been dynamic on the field, off the field. He has said all the right things. He has done all the right things. He drives the speed limit. I mean, there is no issues so far with Justin Jefferson. So why not make him fine? You want to, and because it would, if you'd gotten ahead of this, Bosa's contract would have came afterwards. So now that bar isn't at $200 million.
You're talking about Bosa. Look at Joe Burrow, $275.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Every minute that the Vikings sit here and go, well, we have time on our side. No, you don't.
And I think, Pierre, you probably saw this. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson's best friend, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. He came out and said the other day, I hope Justin Jefferson resets the market for me.
Yeah.
He was like, I hope he resets it. So I think you have an idea of what Jefferson is looking for, and that is a monster contract.
It makes sense.
It does, but salary cap matters. You still got to be able to field a team.
I know, but if they let this guy walk, you guys don't have the history of Minnesota sports that I have, okay? We've seen David Ortiz go on and win multiple World Series. We see Randy Moss get traded away.
Right.
And how that set this franchise backwards when they let Moss out the door. You keep your legends here. And if it ends up not ending you in a Super Bowl, at least it looks like you did. You swung for the fences. Look, we paid the money to keep the best player in the National Football League on our team. If we let the best player in the National Football League walk away, or we trade him for a bunch of draft picks, and then we draft a guy like Troy Williamson, who has no hands, who was supposed to place Randy Moss. Unfortunately, he had no vision, and that blew up in their face. So, I mean, that's what they're sitting here with.
Yeah, but what I would say to that is if the result of trading away a wide receiver is what sent your franchise into disarray, then you have a poorly built team to begin with, because when you look at look at the Chiefs. I mean, Tyreek Hill is just Mr. All Planet, and they had no problem trading him, and they won a Super Bowl. And I know it's a different situation because you have the best quarterback in the NFL.
This team isn't a Super Bowl contender.
They're not
today,
but they're not. And but that's kind of what.
But you would go backwards even further if you let him walk.
Well,
because then you'd have Jordan Addison as your number one wide receiver.
This is my problem with the words competitive rebuild. You either tear it down and start from scratch, or you have a team that you know is good and put your foot on.
Well, I think you say that so a guy like Jefferson, like you said, do I really want to sit here and watch this kid learn how to play in the NFL? That's my quarterback.
Well, I think there's a lot of speculation on that topic, and I think that's one we can talk about all season and all off season. I think right now the topic is Jefferson is here, he's playing, and he's one of the best players in the National Football League, and they just need to find ways to keep getting him the football and keep him happy. So when you go into contract negotiations at the end of this season, he's happy, and he's more willing to re-sign here. I think that's the key right now.
All right, let's leave it on that note. Anything else anybody want to throw us on the table before
Big week
I
coming
get
up
out
for
of
the
here?
Minnesota Vikings. Short turnaround for them. They have to regroup. They got to become physical at the line of scrimmage. That's what Kevin O'Connell said after the game. And Philadelphia is very physical up front, both offensively and defensively. I think that they need to get past this game. As everybody says in sports, next play, move on, short-term memory. That's what they're going to need in order to be competitive. I think everyone knows Philadelphia is pretty good, but they struggled yesterday against the New England Patriots. So every week, everybody has an opportunity to win in the National Football League. It just depends on if your team is going to execute. And if Kirk Cousins can go down the field, throw for 300-plus yards, Justin Jefferson go for 150, they have a chance to compete as long as they don't turn the ball over. I'm not predicting a W, but they just need to go play solid football. Don't turn the ball over. And they may have a chance to keep up scoring with them.
He's ready.
The one thing
he's ready.
That has bothered me about Kevin O'Connell's offense the moment he's gotten here. It's the same thing when we saw him when he was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. A complete I shouldn't say disregard, but a complete lack of enthusiasm in terms of establishing a run. I know we are trying to devalue running backs time and time again as this league continues to evolve, but at the same time, too, some old school football from time to time, please. Turn around, hand the ball off, control the clock. You let a guy like Dalvin Cook walk out the door who's still very capable of getting the job done, and then you run the ball 17 times in a game in which you only trailed by 7 at the most. Why? Why is this offense so insistent on throwing the running back position out in the cold? I don't understand it whatsoever. I know you don't have a guy as talented as Dalvin in the backfield now, but if you gave Alexander Mattison a little bit of money, it wasn't a lot of money, but if you want to give Alexander Mattison a little bit of money and to try to prove that you're committed to him, to being the number one back, why don't you turn around and hand the ball off and try to establish a run? Where's the line trying to bully people around on a run? How about some moxie, some attitude? How about I want to punch people in the mouth and run the football? I mean, can we like at least change it up a little bit, please, to try to keep drives alive?
Do you need to go give the Vikings a pregame speech on Thursday?
No. Hey, they're gonna need a lot more than that from me on Thursday. That's for the starters.
All right, Pierre, how do people subscribe to this if they're watching this on the YouTube channel? Where the heck do they follow us, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff?
Just look to the Fox 9 YouTube page, and you can find us right there, Vikings Now, a new podcast we're starting.
Or anywhere you look for podcasts, Apple, Spotify, whatever, you name it. Make
That's
sure you
true.
follow us, subscribe, like, comment. Let us know how we can get better, and we'll keep dishing out the hot takes and the inside locker room chatter following every game.
There you go. Vikings fall to Tampa 2017. We will talk to you after the Eagles game, and hopefully it'll be a much more positive scenario.